Welcome to Wesley Impact. This week we meet a guest who knew what it was to lose so much. Caught up in a wealth creation situation, Trish Jenkins became the scapegoat of a trader fraudster. The mother of three was sentenced to 2.5 years to be suspended eventually after 8 months. Stripped of pride, dignity and self-worth, she's written a book which talks about her journey back into a life of freedom. It's called Treasures of Darkness. We welcome Trish into the studio to tell us some of your story. Lovely to have you here. Let me start right away in the book. You say, your kingdom is still only a house of cards. Any moment it can be taken from you. And in a way, you know that, don't you?
I sure do. It just happened so quickly. And my husband and I had worked so hard, and we'd built a property portfolio, accumulated property, and been really careful with our money and done a lot of giving, and we diversified because we thought that was a sensible thing to do. Gave our money to a currency trader to trade with, and that went well for a while, and he asked me to be a contact person for other people because he was so busy. And I did that, and that worked well for 1.5 years, and then suddenly he stopped paying, and it was my job to tell everybody we were not getting our money. And after 3 months of having to do this and the stress and people needing their money, I caved under pressure, and I had money come in that I was supposed to give him, and I just felt like I had to fix the problem. I needed to pay people, and I used that to pay people instead of giving it to him, which is what I should have done.
Trish, you say something quite straightforward, really. You say God is somehow using the judge as an instrument, really, to actually say something, that the judge becomes God's instrument, if you like. What do you mean by that?
Well, it really tickles me, Keith, because a couple of days before I went to court, in my prayer time, God really showed me that I was going to go in. Now, I could have got a sentence of anything from a fine to what I got, to the extent of what I got. I got the heavy end. And he showed me that it was part of his plan and that there was work for me to do, which sounds very spiritual, but I really felt that conviction and I had a confidence. And so, as far as I'm concerned, that judge had nothing to do with my sentence except to be God's mouthpiece. Whether he intended that or not, he is instrumental in the extension of the kingdom of God, both in prison and outside.
And you're open about your faith all through this journey.
I was. The thing is, you know, the strength that I drew on to hide it would be to disrespect it and to invalidate it. And I needed God. It's a matter of life and death in a place like that. It's so serious and it's so dangerous that I had to cling to my faith and to a relationship with God. And, you know, God shows up. When you honour him and you trust him, he shows up. So really, when you come to the end of yourself at the point of despair, as it were, that's where God meets you. That is where God meets you. And I had to get to the point, you know, everybody prays for the thing that they believe is going to be the answer, whether it be finance or healing or anything like that. And I got to the point of surrender where, you know, God, I don't want to go to jail, but I surrender my will to yours. And by doing that, in that moment, there was a freedom and a burden that lifted off, and I could actually look for... It was scary, don't get me wrong, and it was hard. But I really felt a sense of purpose.
You say that it changed your view of prosperity, which is an interesting thing because, to some extent, prosperity or whatever money was something that had been real to you before that. What happened that made things change? What actually changed?
Well, it had, and the biblical principles of finance, they work, they do. But Jesus also talks about the true riches. And when I was in prison, I couldn't call on any lawyers to help anyone else. I couldn't call on my contacts. I couldn't do anything, you know, financial to help people. But the true riches of God are people. And I got to know the most beautiful women who might not have necessarily looked a certain way on the outside, but when you're in among them and you're one of them and you get to know their stories, you just see the value of people and you can love them for who they are. And when you have impacted someone, when you've shared the love of God with someone, there's nothing like it. When you see that light come on in their eyes, there's nothing like it.
Trish, for a period of time, I used to be part of a pastoral team in a prison, and I know that one of the dangers of Christian people going into prison is that they go into themselves. There can be a denial, you know, there can be, oh, I wasn't really guilty of this, and all of that, and stay in their cell, and don't associate with other people. Was that temptation there for you?
Not at all, no. I just felt a sense of, for me to waste that opportunity would be to waste my whole life. God had put me in a position where I could make a difference, and I was determined not to waste it. And you know, shame is a terrible thing, and shame keeps people silent. It makes them feel like they don't have the right to offer the gifts that are in their life, and that's a lie. And these poor women who were in there, who were Christians, they felt ashamed and frightened. And sometimes it's a bit of intimidation because you're worried about what other people think, and the rough and tough ones and the God haters. But you know, when you look at people as Christ looks at them, and many times I had plenty of opportunities for offence, but many times I would pray, God, show me your perspective of this woman or that officer or different ones. And he would. And I would see them so differently that I couldn't help but share the love of God with them however I could. I guess I'm a rescuer by nature.
What would you say then to somebody who is tuning in, talking to us and saying, I'm in the same kind of situation, I'm going to face court, I'm going to face trial? What would you say to them?
I would say to them, you're going to go through this whether you go with God or without God. Choose God and trust him. Let go of what you think God should do and totally trust in his purpose. Ask him for his perspective and to see people as he sees them, and to give you his heart for them. And it will be a trial that you go through, a tribulation that you go through, that will end up as a treasure in your life, which is why I called the book Treasures of Darkness. Treasure isn't found laying on the street, an easy street. It's dirty and it's covered in muck, and it's hard work to find it. But when you can look at things differently, no matter what your situation, there is treasure to be found if you don't wallow in self-pity and you don't get all angry and upset about it, but you look for God's perspective and look for the good, and it will emerge, and you will be better for it.
Just in a sentence or two, what about the future?
The future, I just want to keep making a difference. You know, I speak to Christian groups and I encourage them, and I speak to secular groups about fraud prevention and finding profit in their bottom line by treating their people much, much better. That there's treasure in their people, and whatever I can do to make a difference. And you know what? If my story, a thing that I was ashamed of, is the reason that I have a platform. So I'm thankful to the judge, because he's actually given me a platform to make a bigger difference in the world. How good's that?
Look, Trish, thanks ever so much for being willing to share your story, your journey. And not only should we say thanks for joining us, but we shall think of you as you look into the future to see what God has in the future for you.
Thank you, Keith.